What's up, guys? Today we're talking about half marathon training for peak performance. I'm actually going to break down all the specific workouts you need to get there. So when it comes to peak performance, what we're really talking about is finishing in a certain speed. We're not just surviving the race. In the beginning, when we first trained for a marathon or a half marathon, that's what we're going after, is just trying to get across the finish line. But now the goal is to find a certain speed, doesn't matter how relatively fast or slow that is, and maintaining that speed all the way through. So in that respect, is we just need to be able to train ourselves to maintain that speed all the way through. Where it gets a little tricky is that in order to maintain that speed, we need to have the mechanics to be able to support my ability to run that speed for that distance. And then to be able to support the mechanics, I need the strength training and the mobility in my body to be able to do that, to be able to do that, to be able to do that. So what we're gonna talk about in this video are just some of those pieces and run workouts we need to do to hit all those areas to have our peak performance. Now, even though we have the speed in mind, it would be a fool's errand to try to run that speed all the time. And in fact, the bulk of our training is actually still gonna be pretty slow. And that's a good thing. You know, that's how we build that mountain of aerobic fitness, is by being that aerobic monster, being that athlete who can handle all those miles. And there are a few benefits to those slower miles. I get all the adaptations I need from a cardiovascular and aerobic level, increased mitochondrial density, increased muscle capillarization, which basically means I've got more delivery little roads and vehicles for blood cells to get to those working muscles. So there's a lot of things that happen at that slow intensity that's actually really, really beneficial. And if I train too fast all the time, I actually just beat myself up and risk injury, so it doesn't really help. The other great thing about training slow is that it's a great time to work on your mechanics. And if you know us, you know we're mechanics geeks. We always like to sneak in a little bit of technique work in there all the way. So what we're actually gonna do is every 10 minutes on our slow run, just to make sure we are reinforcing good motor patterns, is that we're gonna add a little bit. And we could almost do any run drill. There's no run drill that's wrong. Two run drills that I've liked to add in this type of situation. One is a little karaoke. So stepping back just to show you, after 10 minutes, I'm just in my run, I'm cruising, my body gets sort of stuck in a little slow, in a kind of a relaxed movement pattern. Imagine like you've been sitting on an airplane for a couple hours or sitting at your desk for a couple hours. You're not the superhero, you're kind of here. So I need something to get me back into superhero mode. And the first thing I'm gonna work on is just a little karaoke where I'm gonna do a little crossover all the way across. And then, you know, I can even switch directions and go back. But what I like to do is probably like 10 to 20 of those each direction. It works on a lot of rotation through the upper and lower body, which just gets me fluid again. It gets my feet turning over again, which is kind of nice. And it's just a different movement pattern, so it wakes me up a little bit. The other one I don't like to do, but I find is helpful, is a little high knee. So as I run, I'm gonna go ahead and get those knees up there real high. The one thing that I to not like about this is that it's hard. It forces me to really be engaged here, to be really tall, and to really get my muscles moving fast, to almost get into that fast twitch frame of mind, which once again gets me out of that rut that we fall into and we just run slow all the time. So bulk of our training is gonna be slow. It could be a couple minutes per mile slower than our target pace. That's perfect. But when we do those slow miles, it's a perfect opportunity to reinforce our mechanics, and we can do that with some different run drills sprinkled in every 10 minutes. My favorites of the day, a little karaoke and a little bit of high knees. Now, we play how we practice. So if we want to get good at, say, targeting an 8-minute mile or a 10-minute mile or a 7:30-minute mile or whatever pace you want to run, a 5-minute mile for your half marathon, you actually need to be good at practicing that pace as you train. And the way we're going to do that is in our tempo runs and at the end of some of our long runs. And one of the things I like to start off is, say, 5 by 5 minutes, working on that half marathon speed, maybe building up to my 10K pace so my body gets comfortable running at that higher speed. It's gonna build up my stamina, it's gonna build up my strength, and just mechanically, it's just gonna get me used to running at that higher, slightly higher intensity level, and even being able to pace there. So I'm gonna work on that thing over the next couple weeks. I could work up to 30 minutes, 35, 40 45 minutes worth of tempo, and I could break that up in different ways. I could start at 5 by 5, 5 by 6 minutes. I could move to 4 by 8 minute intervals. I could do 3 to 4 by 10 minute intervals. I could do 3 by 15 minute monsters, and that's a great way to reinforce that. The second way I like to reinforce that tempo work and race pace work is actually at the end of my half marathon long runs, where I'm actually working on finishing those long runs at race pace. Now remember, in the earlier segment I said the bulk of my training is slow. That's exactly right. The bulk is slow, but that 10 to 15% on top needs to be race pace or faster. And it's at the end of that long run where I actually get to train myself on tired legs how to run at that speed, and that's going to build a lot of confidence and a lot of pacing. And the other great thing about doing that little tempo build up at the end of my long run is that it's training my body to be patient and slow in the beginning of the run, which we need for our race, and to slowly increase our effort as we go through, which is a crucial mental and physical skill we need to have a good race. Now, we can't just spend all of our time in race pace, because even at half marathon, the race pace actually really isn't that fast. We need to build a stronger, faster runner from an all-out perspective. And if I know I can kind of build your top end speed, what that's going to do is slowly drag everything up over time. That's why, you know, our most successful half marathoners and marathoners actually have a pretty darn good 5K and mile. And they actually have to work on that mile and that 5K at certain times of the year, build that speed so that when they go back to their long runs, their easy long run pace is automatically faster because they've worked on it all the time. And if you're that person who's stuck in the same gear, it's probably because you're just running in that same gear. So working on some speed training and kind of some speed strength training is so beneficial, and we would do that an additional day on our training. So we've got our long runs, we've got our easy runs, really focusing on technique. We have our tempo runs working on at race pace or a little bit faster, getting comfortable there. And then we have a day where we're targeting 5K speed or faster. And a great way to do that would be on a track. I could do that out on trails. I could do this as a fartlek style run where I'm working on those short bursts of higher intensity. If we're going to talk about a track, one of my favorite workouts would be 400-meter repeats. It's a great way to get comfortable and get situated there. And what we could do is, say, build ourselves up to 10 to 12 by 400s. That would be 3 miles of speed work, which would be an appropriate level for running a faster half marathon. And I could try to build up my speed. Sometimes I like to play little games where numbers 3, 6, 9, and 12 are a little bit faster than the other one. So I've just got a little bit of pacing play. I could then tie that into, say, 3 to 5 by 1,000 meter repeats on the track. Same thing, trying to maintain that speed, but just bridging it out a little bit longer. Before I'm on the track, if I've never been on the track before, if I'm new to this type of speed work, what I actually love to do is hill work and stairs. Those are great ways to really develop that speed, strength, and power with while minimizing the impact and the eccentric load that comes with running those faster speeds. And a lot of times when we run fast, we haven't done it for a while, our hamstrings get really stiff. That's usually what happens, but working on, say, like a hill kind of minimizes that. So it's like a safe way to reintroduce that speed work. Now, the two biggest mistakes I probably see with athletes is not necessarily on the training, but it's actually on their execution. And I can't be good at racing if I never let myself practice, because guess what? We are going to make some mistakes. We're going to get too excited and run out too fast. We're going to run in the wrong shoes, drink the wrong thing at the wrong time. All that stuff is going to happen. And if you look at the athlete you see who's been successful, either they were the 1 out of 100 person whose planets aligned and they got lucky and they don't know why, or it's the person who's been sitting on, you know, a whole mountain of races that they've gone through, and they've kind of figured out some of those things, and that's why they were able to execute. So build into your half marathon training plan some practice races, and what I would recommend would be at least one 5K, at least one 10K, And then if you really care about your half, maybe doing a half marathon earlier in the training cycle or earlier in part of the year where you don't care as much about the time, but you're just going through the motions, enjoying the day, just getting a feel for things. Because if I'm putting a lot of pressure to perform in my half marathon and I haven't done at least 1 or 3, that's a very unfair position to put myself in. So I want to have some practice races that make such a big difference in terms of being able to set clear goals and objectives, and fair ones as well. And that leads me into my final piece, which is actually going to be talking about our taper. It's important that when we get to our race, we let our training drop down a little bit in volume and a little bit in intensity to allow our body to rest and recover, to go into this race feeling sharp as possible. Now, a taper doesn't mean no training whatsoever, because my body goes into hibernation mode and I can't perform well if I'm here. So what I need to do is drop the volume back, by 10, 20, 30% or more, especially as I get closer to the race, the percentage is gonna be even more. And what I'm gonna actually focus on is doing short bursts of race pace or faster, and that's gonna keep me sharp. An example of that would be 5 by 60 seconds at a race pace or something like that, just to keep myself going. And that way I'm gonna go into my race feeling rested and feeling sharp. Now, the more I care about my race and the fitter I am, I can actually afford a longer taper. So let's say it's my first half marathon. I probably want at least a week, 7 days before I start to drop things. But if this is a race I really, really care about, that taper could be as long as 10 days or 2 weeks. But to have that longer taper, I need to have the bigger mountain of fitness. So if you're that person who's been sitting on a couple races and this is your last race of the year and you've done all this hard work, don't be afraid to give yourself a longer taper to go ahead and hang it all out there for that race. If you do that along with those practices and you've done all that tempo work, your race pace isn't gonna be a mystery, you're gonna hit it out of the park. Guys, one more thing, if you like this video, go ahead and let me know, hit that like button down below. If you have any comments or questions on things we talked about today, any requests for future videos, hit me up in the comments down below. We'll definitely try to respond back to you and get a little conversation going. If you want more half marathon training tips, advice on strength training exercises you should be doing, how to fix common running injury areas, subscribe to our channel, The Run Experience. We've got great content coming out on a regular basis. And then finally, if you want a free, downloadable, comprehensive training guide, everything you need to know about how to train for that half marathon, well, you're in luck, because we got one. We want to give it to you. All you need to do to get it is click this link in this video. If you happen to be on a mobile device, which is probably the case, you're going to go down in the description, you're going to click a link there, and it's just going to take you to a page. Once you're there, you'll be able to enter your name and your email, and I'll be able to personally send you your free half marathon training guide. That's it. Well, guys, thanks again for watching so much. Catch you in the next video.